Today, I'm going to walk you through how I built 3 versions of a guessing game in Python. I will show you the gameplay of the games and then show you the code. I encourage you to try and build the games after I explain how to play them, but before I show you the code. But for now, I will explain when that is later on. For now, let's get into it. So as you see on my screen, I have the terminal open. The first line that I see is enter your guess from 1 to 10. So I'll go ahead and say 5. The text reads, 5 is lower than the real number. Enter your guess from 1 to 10. So I know I want to enter a value that is above 5 because 5 is lower than the real number, but less than 10. So anywhere from 6 to 10. So let's go 7. 7 is higher than the real number. So I know it's probably going to be 6 because it's greater than 5 but less than 7. So let's try 6. And there we go, you got it. I'll run this one more time if I hit the run button. Enter your guess from 1 to 10. I'll go 5 right in the middle. 5 is lower than the real number, so it's probably from 6 to 10. So let's go 7. 7 is lower than the real number, so it's probably from 8 to 10. So let's go 9. And I got it, it was 9. So that was the beginner. Let's move on to intermediate now. So now you can see I'm prompted by enter the lowest number you would like to see. So let's still go from 1 to enter the highest number you would like to see. Let's go 10. And then enter your guess from 1 to 10. Let's go 5. 5 is higher than the real number. Enter your guess 1 to 4. So you can now see it also tells me what the range is that I should enter it in. So let's go 3. 3 is lower than the real number. Enter your guess from 4 to 4. So at that point we know that it's probably going to be 4. And you got it in 3 guesses. You can see that it now tells me how many guesses I got it in. We'll run that one more time. What is the lowest number you would like to see? Let's go 1. Let's go to 100. And you guess from 1 to 100, we're going to go 50. 50 is higher than the real number. Enter your guess from 1 to 49. We'll go 25. 25 is higher than the real number. Enter your guess from 1 to 24. We'll go 15. 15 is higher than the real number. 1 to 14. We'll go 10. Now 10 is higher than the real number. Enter your guess from 1 to 9. Let's go 4. Enter your guess from 1 to 3. Let's go 2. Oops, 2. Okay, so it's 1. Now let's run that one more time. Let's go 1 to 100. Let's go 50. Now 50 is lower than the real number. Enter your guess from 51 to 100. Let's go 75. 75 is higher than the real number. So now it's 51 to 74. Let's go 60. 60 is lower than the real number. So 61 to 74. Let's go 70. 70. So it's between 71 and 74. Let's go 73. Oh, 71 to 72. Let's go 72. And it is 71. So now you can see I got it in 7 guesses. So that's the intermediate. Let's move on to the advanced. So now you see I have the advanced here. So enter the lowest number you would like to see. And I'm going to enter in 10. And now enter the highest number you would like to see, 1. So you notice that this doesn't work out. So it says, please enter a valid range. Enter the lowest number you would like to see. Now we'll enter in a valid range, and the highest is 10. Enter your guess from 1 to 10. We'll go 5. 5 is higher than the real number, 1 to 4. Let's guess 3. 3 is higher than the real number. Enter your guess from 1 to 2. We'll go 2, and we'll go 1. And there we go, we got it in 4 guesses. Let's go one more time with this. Enter the lowest number you would like to see, 1. Enter the highest number you would like to see, 10. Enter your guess from 1 to 10, we'll go 5. And there we go, I got it on my first guess, 1 out of 10. 10% chance of getting it. So that is all of them played. So I suggest that you go ahead and build all of these games, build them to the best of your ability, and then come back after that and see how I did it. Alright everyone, so you see I have the beginner guessing game pulled up on my screen. It's only 17 lines of code, so a pretty short game. And let's just walk you through it. So line by line, first I import random. This allows me to generate a random integer, which you'll see later on. I also have a condition, which is guessed, and guessed equals false, because I have not yet guessed the number. Then you can see I have this line that says random guess equals random.randint 1 to 10, and that is how I generate a random integer. So now I say while not guessed, this is equivalent to while guessed equals false. These are the equivalent lines. So while not guessed, guess equals an integer input into your guess from 1 to 10. So this gets any integer from 1 to 10 that you put in. This just gets your input. Then it checks if your guess is the random guess. Then guessed equals true. And you'll see that it prints out you got it at the end. Otherwise, if guess is greater than random guess, you print out that your guess is higher than the real number. Otherwise, you print out your guess is lower than the real number. And there's only one other option that this could be, so we know that it has to be guess is less than random guess. Then finally, you print out you got it once you are guessed. And that's all there is to the beginner guessing game. Now let's move on to the intermediate. So you see we've got the intermediate guessing game pulled up, and there's a bit more code, just about 30 lines. So let's take a look line by line and see what it does. So first we import random. This allows us to generate a random number. We then initialize a few variables. Guess amount, this is the amount of turns that it's taken to guess. Guess, that is your current guess. Guessed equals false, this is the condition for the loop. And next game is initialized at 1, and that's because we're keeping track of the game now. So now we also have a lower and upper input, and this is because the random.randint function takes in two parameters, the lower and the upper bound, and these are what you're entering in. So now we enter the loop, while not guessed, or in other words, while guessed equals false, guess equals the integer of input, and then enter your guess from the lower bound to the upper bound. Then you increment your guess to the next guess, and then you say if guess equals the random guess, if you got it, then guessed equals true, and it will print out how many guesses you got it in. Otherwise, if guess is greater than random guess, you print out that your guess was higher than the real number, and you create the upper bound guess minus 1. However, if guess is lower than the real number, you create the lower bound guess plus 1. And this is all the math that's required to get that lower bound and upper bound working to change for you. Let's now move on to the advanced guessing game. So here you see that we've got the advanced guessing game pulled up, and it's just about 50 lines of code, 40 lines of code, not too bad. So we first import random, which we've done before, and we initialize a few variables. Now you'll see valid input is a new variable, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. So here you see, instead of just lower and upper, this is what makes sure that it's a valid range, so that it's not 10 to 1, but 1 to 10. So we say while not valid underscore input, or while valid input equals false, then lower equals the integer of input, and you enter in the lowest number you would like to see. And for upper, you enter in the highest number you would like to see. And then you check if lower is less than upper, which is what you want, then valid input is true. Otherwise, you print out please enter a valid range, and you continue with the loop. So assuming that you've entered in a valid integer, if not, it would go through the loop again. Random guess equals the lower bound and the upper bound, as we saw previously. So here you can see we have the advanced guessing game. So the first thing we do is import random, then we initialize our variables. You can see valid input is a new variable, and we'll get to that in just a moment. So you can see the next line, line 9, while not valid input, or while valid input equals false, lower and upper are defined as variables that you enter. So int input, enter the lowest number you would like to see. This is the lower bound and the upper bound. You've seen this before. However, now we say if lower is less than upper, then valid input equals true. How otherwise, you say please enter a valid range. So this checks to make sure lower is less than upper. And this is what we want, to make sure we have a valid range. So now we make a random number using the random.randint. And then we create a new function, which we haven't seen before. So to create a function, we use the def keyword. So we define validate input, and we pass a number as a parameter, low and high. Now you can see that we assign low to lower and high to upper because that's where we want those values to be. So now when we call validate input, as you'll see later on, we don't actually have to pass those values. So now with the input itself, we check if the type is an integer. And if it is, we also check to make sure it's in the range. And if all of that's the case, we return true. Otherwise, we return false if any of that is not correct. Now we enter in our main loop, we say while not guessed, or while guessed equals false, as it otherwise is. Then we create our guess, and our guess is any number from the lower to the higher. And then we validate that input to make sure it's in that range. Now if it is, we say guess amount is the next game, so we increment the next game that you'll print out, and we check to see if it's lower, higher, or equal to random guess, and that's all there is to it. So let me know how this tutorial was for you, if it was too advanced, not advanced enough, if you want to see more like this. And I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one. Later.